and welcome to 101 ESPN. It is the Hit Squad, webisode number 2. Chad Range alongside Jesse Finney. Good to have you here, bud.
Good to have you, man. It's going to be fun.
It is going to be fun. We have a lot to talk about, of course. June 15th, the 15th, hard to believe that, anniversary of Shamrock Fighting Championships. That's happening at River City Casino. Now, you saw Dirks Bentley there.
I saw Dirks Bentley last
We're going to hear
Thursday
from
night.
that.
Yes, and it was awesome, man. And
it's quite a venue.
The venue is great.
We'll definitely get more on that. Of course, we're also going to have an interview talking about the main event. Justin DeMoney, great name there, taking on Adam Sella, a guy who's really become a local celebrity here with The Ultimate Fighter, getting some notoriety there, getting a lot of good fights in the UFC. They've kind of sent him down to AAA. Of course, we've talked about Shamrock Fighting Championships. It is kind of the Memphis Redbirds, if you will, to the UFC. He needs a couple fights. He's actually doing it at a lower weight class, which I think will be good for Adam.
He'll do well. I mean, he was fighting in the UFC at 185 pounds, and these 185 pounders are huge.
They are.
And they're huge. And Adam is at 170, which now Adam was fighting at 185. He's going back to 170, which is his natural weight class, and he is a monster of a 170.
So he's getting to go from being the little guy to the big guy.
Correct.
And that's
Correct.
That's big. We're going to hear from him, and of course, this is his really, I guess, his first fight getting back to the UFC. This is kind of where it starts for him on June 15th at River Casino. It is his first fight. He fought Tor over in Sweden. And he actually was submitted in that one, so obviously he's looking to get back into his winning ways.
Absolutely. You know, we actually spoke to Joe Silva, the UFC, said, listen, you know, go get some wins, get back in your regular weight class. You know, there's guys that we cut that we'll never have back. Adam's one of the kids that they said, you know what?
They got their eye on him.
They got him eye on. You know, he's a good-looking kid. He speaks well, and he's never in a boring fight. So we got him. We got an interview with him, and we also have an interview with Justin DeMoney, who's the main event on Saturday night at Shamrock FC at River City Casino.
And of course, UFC 161 going on as well on Saturday night.
Interesting, man. That's a great card. I think the one of the interesting ones to me is Tyron Woodley on the undercard. It's free on Fox on FX, and then you have Dan Henderson is going to be fighting Rashad Evans. I tell you what. That's a hell of a fight.
That is a great fight.
It's stylistically, this is what makes mixed martial arts. Is you got two guys that are, one's an Olympic wrestler, one's a D1 wrestler, and they both like to strike. So that's an interesting fight, and it can be exciting, man. I mean, both could put each other to sleep.
The thing that really strikes me about that fight is that how quickly they're booking 164 in advance, but all of a sudden they got that together. Henderson versus Evans, and that became the main event. That was just a couple weeks ago.
Right, and I tell you what, I mean, that's a great main event, man. I mean, you look at the fight, and what happened is there was a guy that got hurt. There was one of the guys in the main event got hurt, so then they booked it. But this fight was bound to happen regardless, because one of my prediction is if Dan Henderson loses this fight, he's done. I really think that he might take one more, but at this point, he's going to be done. But I tell you what, if you go back and you look at Rashad Evans right now, man, Rashad is on a downward slide. So I mean, what does he do at this point? Does he go back? Does he go back and say, oh, I'm gonna change my game plan? One thing for sure in this, neither one of them are jiu-jitsu players. So I wouldn't be looking for submission. You got one guy that's going to put each other on their backs, and it's 5 rounds, man. So, I mean, it's going to be
a striker's dream, sort of.
It really could be. It really could be. You know what's coming with Dan. You got the big overhand right. You got the big overhand right, but at the same time, you got Rashad, who shoots great blast double legs, could put Dan on his back. Dan doesn't do well on his back, but he scrambles well off of his back. So, I mean, it's going to be, it's got the makings of a fireworks, because you got two guys that want to stand and bang.
And it's one of those things that winner really takes all, loser goes home,
I think the winner retirement. I think the winner is going to move on. I think that the guy that loses this fight should call it quits.
It's over. It's been a good career for both of them, regardless.
Absolutely.
And we want to hear from you. We're on Twitter at HitSquad101ESPN. You can hit us up on email, hitsquad@101sports.com. We want to hear your thoughts on any of the predictions. We want to know where you're watching the fights and fights you might want to see coming up, as always. Now, we're going to be picking the UFC 161 in segment 4. We're both at 19-10. I think that's respectable.
I think so. I think it's.
As hard as it is to pick these things,
right? And I tell you, I mean, that's what's the good thing about mixed martial arts is you got.
It's about a 50-50 chat.
You're wearing 4-ounce gloves. You're not wearing 10-ounce gloves like boxing. And I tell you what, I mean, if we are going 19-10, we start off 50-50.
Oh yeah,
We've been actually doing a little bit better now. But I tell you what, man, this is This fight card.
It'll be
This one's going to be a tough one to pick.
This one will be a tough one. I felt like
I'd like to hear everyone else's predictions as well.
Send them in. HitSquad@101sports.com if you're emailing, and you can always get us on Twitter. Follow us at HitSquad at 101 ESPN. We do want to reiterate that. Now, over the weekend, Fabrico Werdum.
Fabrico Werdum.
I like Fabrico. Fabricio, huh?
Yeah, I tell you what,
he looked good.
He did look good. He looked good, but if you look at Nogueira, I tell you,
Big Nog
was starting to put him on him in the end of the first round. And I think if the fight would have kept going a little bit longer, it'd probably been more in Big Nog's favor, because Fabricio does have a little. You can question his gas tank, but I tell you right now, I mean, Fabricio put himself back on the map. I don't think he's. I think Big Country, your boy, is. I want to see him in Werdum.
Absolutely. Well, we've talked about that, the heavyweights last webisode, and we're going to be kind of getting into it again. There's some interesting things that unfold out as concerning Daniel Cormier. We'll get into that here shortly. But I do want to talk about the free. This was free on FX.
Free on FX.
You can't beat that.
That was actually free on Fuel.
Fuel. See, they're all over the place. FX. It's hard to keep up with them. We only do the on Fox and the pay-per-views.
Correct. We only
reiterate it to me.
Right. Only pick on pay-per-views and free on Fox.
But there's also free on Fuel and free on FX, so there's plenty.
Think the sport's mainstream now?
I believe it's hit there. I do believe it has
Love
hit.
it.
Yes. And well, from that, what else other than Werdum's win? And Big Nog, he just cannot find any consistency.
He can't find consistency.
He wins, he loses, wins, he loses.
I mean, the guy is he's a legend in the sport, and if I hear from everybody that he was the one that was giving Dana White saying, man, don't tell us when to quit. Don't tell us when to quit. But there comes a time and point that guy's made a ton of money with UFC, a ton of money with Pride. And you know, if you're going to be the number one guy in the world, you know, I mean, you're not cutting the mustard anymore. And that's what you say you're striving to be. Well, you're not going to make it at this point.
Not with the log jam that they have.
So what does he do? I mean, really, does he just say, you know what, I'm not going to be number one in the world anymore? I think I'm done. I think that's a great way to be respectable. Say, you know what, here's what I'm going to do. And if I can't get there, you know, it's time for me to go.
But you've seen it time and time again with Brett Favre, Michael Jordan. These guys have trouble hanging it up. It's just the competitive athlete.
It is. It's competitive. Trust me, I know.
You know how it is. But we're moving on to UFC 161. That's the one we're going to be picking later on, segment 4. If you're clicking around on the webisodes, you'll want to see our predictions then. But the main card, starting at 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 7 p.m. Pacific, we're going to be Patrick Berry versus Sean Jordan. And I'll be honest, I knew Patrick Berry when he was with the World Combat League. Huge fan. The guy he's got legs that are like tree trunks, and he uses them to wear the other opponent down. Leg kick, leg kick. I mean, he'll wear you out. I'm looking forward to Patrick Berry on this card.
He's got a good fight. He's got a good fight to showcase it here with Sean Jordan, and that's one thing that I feel that UFC really does well with making good fights, and making exciting fights. They're not going to put in a pushover. They're going to give them someone that's going to stand and bang with them, and they make it for excitement. And all that does is just build more fans. So I mean, I think that at the end of the day, they're giving Pat Berry great fights or winnable fights that he can actually go out and he can fight, you know, and stand and bang with people.
And of course, Alexis Davis taking on Rosie Sexton.
Interesting
name, Rosie Sexton, for a UFC fighter.
Listen, I'm all for the women fighting, but I am not for someone like that in that fight taking someone like Tyron Woodley's spot on the main card.
On the main card?
You know, it's one of these things that are trying to get a woman on the main card, How about make them earn their way onto the main card?
Well, now that's an interesting. This is a whole nother segment. Obviously, UFC is trying to push the women.
Absolutely, and they're doing a great job, and the women are doing a great job.
They are, but I mean, I know Tyron Woodley more than I've heard of either one of those.
You've heard of Jake Shields probably more too.
Exactly, and that's a good fight, and that's, I mean, I guess for the fans, it's good. It's free.
It's free.
You know, they don't have to pay for that one. Yeah.
I agree, but you know what? I don't like him being able to take the money, because he's losing a lot of money in sponsorship dollars.
I hear from the fighter's point of view. That's a great look at it. And of course, my boy Roy Nelson, man, I'm excited. He's on his way. Big country.
He is, man. I mean, that's a guy that's actually like he's extremely underrated. He's a great grappler. He's Renzo Gracie black belt, and he's got a head of concrete. You can't knock the guy out. I mean, as much as I don't like him and his persona and everything he's about, he's a great fighter. So you can't take that away from him, but he just plays it up too much, man.
And
that's my opinion. I know you like it. You think it's funny. I think it is. And you know what? It's appealing to everybody. I think it's good for the sport.
I mean, I think he could tap into a big market that would cater to his demeanor, his MO, whatever you want to say it is. But something that I wanted to see him fight Daniel Cormier. Well, that's not going to happen because this is the news following. Cormier's dropping down to 205. Something you said he should do.
Yes, I think he should.
You said you would take.
And here's the reason I said that to you, though, is because, Cain Velasquez is his teammate. Cain Velasquez is the heavyweight world champion. He's the best heavyweight in the world right now. So instead of just going and fighting your teammate who helped you get where you're at, and Daniel helped him get where he's at.
Right.
You know what? Why not have two titles out of one gym? And I think that if you're looking long term, he's not going to lose that much more money. But if he goes out and beats John Jones, how much more money is he going to make?
Yeah.
So there's two sides.
It is. It's tough because
I became a Daniel Cormier fan even more because of what he's going to do.
Well, yeah, that is I mean, he's unbeaten. I believe he's 12 and 13 and 0.
Yes,
I mean, and for him to say, "Well, I'm going to switch now," I think that's selfless. And I do think that's, like you said, and it's hard to imagine UFC with teams.
Right.
Because it's such an individual sport. You think, well, if I'm going to do so, I'm going to do what's good for me.
Right. I agree.
Not
I agree. And here's something that, you don't know and I don't know. And how does Daniel do with Cain in the gym?
Right. Yeah.
And I'm not saying that. I don't believe that. I don't believe that. Okay, but I'll say it. But there might be something there. This is the media, and we're supposed to stir it up a little bit, so who knows? But at the same time, I mean, there might be something that we don't know that, Cain maybe gets the better of Daniel in the gym. I don't necessarily see that being the point. I think he's actually doing it to move down to 205 so they can have two world titles out of one gym, a.k.a. in San Jose.
We're going to be talking about that. Of course, the main event, Dan Henderson and Rashad Evans, and as well, Little Nog is going to be fighting.
Yeah, that's a good fight.
It is a good fight. And we'll be talking about more of that in segment 4.
What isn't a good fight in the UFC, though?
They're all
sorry
good.
to interrupt you, but it really is the truth. I mean, these guys are doing a phenomenal, great job everywhere.
Well, we'll be talking more about it coming up on 101sports.com.